I'm Teresa, welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me here today. Today I'm going to be going back to one of my most popular techniques, one that I do get a lot of questions about, and that's the magazine image transfer, the resist technique. We're going to be transferring not only images but also text as well, building up some layers with acrylic paints, and then I'm going to be adding some bright pops of colour using acrylic inks, which is something that I've not used before on the plate but work really well in a couple of different ways for different effects. These are the prints we're going to be creating. I'm going to clear them out of the way, get set up, and I'll be back to show you what you need. As always, I'm going to begin with a quick rundown of what we're using today. The plate that I'm using today is my small one, and the gel press 3x5 inch plate, working on a small area. Because I'm using smaller images, smaller pieces of magazine text and things like that. If you want to do a larger print, go ahead and do a larger print. A lot of people do ask me for ideas of using small plates. They've only got a small plate. I know they're quite an expensive item, and a lot of you only have a small plate to work with. So I'm showing you today that this works really well on a small plate. If all you've got is a larger plate, mask off an area. If you want to just work on a small area, get some paper and sort of place it down and mask off a smaller area to work on, and you'll get the same results as I'm getting today. As I said, I'm going to be using some magazine images and text. I will link up in the corner to the first video that I did on this technique, and I explain it in a little bit more detail in there, and you can always find that in my gel printing playlist. If you just look for magazine resist, you'll find one or two videos in there where I've covered this before. The magazine that I'm using is Vogue magazine. I always get good results with that, so I see no reason to change. If you've used other magazines successfully, go ahead and do that. You can indeed do this resist technique with laser prints, and again, if you have a look in my playlist, you'll find where I've covered that in a video with a laser print resist technique video. But I'm using Vogue magazine today. I've chosen some text. I found some words that I quite like. I've got viewpoint all torn up, which I thought was quite appropriate because I'm tearing up pieces of paper. A little quote here that I quite like. And then just some larger bodies of text. And then some images, which I hope will transfer quite well. They're fairly high contrast. Always look for something that's got quite very dark darks and very light lights. So the contrast is what's going to work for you. So I have those. We're going to be using some paint to do the resist technique. So I've chosen some colours. I don't know whether I'm going to use them all. I may well just stick to black and white for my transfers. I'm not entirely sure yet. These are the Arteza tube acrylics. I've chosen a red, yellow and blue and a black and a white. Just good basic colour range. I do actually have a big pot of white here. This is Deco Art Americana paint. Again, would work perfectly well. And I'm also going to be adding some sort of bright splashes of colour with acrylic inks. So I've got some bottles of inks here. I've got red, yellow, blue, green and a violet. Now the brand of these is Artful. They came in an Artful subscription box. It's a quarterly subscription box based in the UK. I do believe they ship worldwide, but obviously the shipping overseas is going to be quite expensive. There are plenty of brands of acrylic ink that you can use. Daler Rowney FW acrylic inks they're easily found in art shops or on Amazon or somewhere, would work perfectly well. So those are acrylic inks. And I have some gel medium. This is just some heavy gel medium, Deco Art Americana Premium. Going to be using that. And let me see, we've got some paper. I've just cut some pieces of paper slightly larger than my plate. They're about 6x4 inches. And if you're interested, this is just out of a pad, Unipin drawing pad, 220 GSM. So, you know, I'm just using that. It's it's fairly sturdy weight without being overly thick. And it seems to take the media all quite well. And I have a brayer, just got a small brayer here. I'm working on a smaller plate, so a smaller brayer. And we've got water, paper towel, baby oil, things like that for cleaning up in between layers, as always. I'm going to begin by showing you how the acrylic inks behave on a plate. And I'm going to show you what they look like when you apply them directly to the plate, and I'm going to show you what they look like when you put down some gel medium first and then apply them, because that really does change the nature of how they work. So obviously acrylic inks are very fluid because they are an ink, and if you put anything very fluid on a gel plate, you know, if you've seen my videos where I've covered like water soluble crayons or watercolor pencils, watercolor paints, because anything that's very thin, very watery, it will just bead up on the plate. It doesn't sort of stay in a solid layer in the way that a thicker acrylic paint does. So as you see, you get this very uneven, blobby, splattery effect, which in itself is really nice. It's not going to give you a solid rectangle of colour, but it is going to create some real nice sort of random abstract splashes of bright colour. So I'll just take the remainder of that off on a scrap of paper. You do find that because it's very liquid, you will get it sort of everywhere. So make sure you've got a covering down on your table. This is like a plasticized covering that I always put down on my table when I'm printing. I don't mind then if it sort of gets messy. So do be aware that because these inks are quite liquid, you will find that they kind of seep over. So do protect the surface that you're working on. So let's see what happens if we put down some gel medium onto our plate. So again, just putting it on the plate, taking my brayer and just creating a nice even coat on the plate. We'll take the same colours again. So I'll take this red and some of this yellow. Love this yellow, nice bright colour. And as you can see there, although not perfectly flat and even, the gel medium kind of increases the viscosity of the ink and allows it to sit in a more solid layer on the plate. And as such, you get a much more sort of solid coverage than we did with the first one. So totally different effect using the same product, but with the addition of the gel medium. I've still got some left on there, so let's just take another. And there we've got a third print. I'm just going to clean my plate off a bit. You will find that the acrylic inks will stay in a little bit, but this is just some baby oil, some mineral oil, and as you can see, it really does help lift out any more colour that's sort of sitting in the surface layers of that plate. So you will be able to remove any heavy staining with a sort of few passes of baby oil. So now we've covered the sort of the basics of how the inks are going to behave on our plate. I'm going to think about creating a sort of collage of image and text, and then adding the splashes of colour as well. Now, I want to be able to obviously see these image transfers, and if you think about when we print, so whatever we put down onto our plate first becomes the top layer. And if you want to be able to see layers that are previously on your piece of paper, for example, say we wanted this to be our background. If you want to keep the vibrancy there, if I was then going to do an image transfer on here, I would have to put a solid layer of paint on in order to lift it, and that layer is then going to sit on top of this colour and subdue it. So I'm going to do my image transfers first, then I'm going to add the colour, because the colour won't be disturbed by any layers of paint in the transfer process, if that kind of makes sense to you. You do kind of have to think a few steps ahead sometimes if you're working with multiple layers. So I think I'm going to say I want to stick to begin with black and white. So I'm going to get some of my black acrylic paint. Create a nice even coating, and let's take this image here, place it down on the plate, when we remove it, the dark areas of ink that were on this printed image have left the paint on our plate. Now the important thing here is you want this layer to dry before we go over it with another layer of paint. So give it a minute or two, depending on the temperature and humidity of where you are. Doesn't normally take very long. It's a very thin layer of paint, but you don't want to disturb it when you brayer another colour over. Now that I think that that layer is dry, I'm going to take some white. I'm just going to use some of this out of the bottle here because it's as easy as anything, and create a thin, even layer all over the top of that image. I'm going to take a piece of my paper, and there's our image transfer. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to create a couple more using these other large photographs that I've got here. I should be able, I'm going to try and see if I can get another one off here. I'm not entirely sure. Your quality does degrade when you use the pictures more than once, but you should be able to get a couple. But I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process using the other images that I've got.
Was it all just a dream, just all in my head? say time is a healer, just you wait and see. The problem is for me, I need an eternity. So tell me and be honest, tell me did you know that you would be leaving me just like the winter snow? Tell me and be honest, tell me should I know that you'd be.
These are the prints that I've ended up with for our first layers. We'll just go back to the beginning where we started. So we started off with this one, really like that, very high contrast, got a great result. This one, although the details in her face are clear here, not such a high contrast photograph, so not quite as clear as the first. Then we had this one here with the lady with the dress. Again, really happy with that one. That was the other lady on the same image, a much darker section of the photograph. So although her face has come up nice and bright, a little less definition here, but still quite a nice image there to work with. So then I went back and did the first one again. And as I say, we've got a pretty good second transfer from that one because it was a very good image to begin with. Then our lady with the tiara, not so clear, but again, not such a clear image in the beginning. So not sure whether I'll be using that one or not. Then we moved on to the lady with the long dress again, and not very clear at all on that second one, but again, we haven't quite got the definition in the first one. I do quite like the mottling effect, so might well be using that one anyway. And because we'd not got brilliant results with this image, I switched in a different image for the last one and just took this one of this lady here instead. So as I say, I think I may not be using that one, but I'll probably be using most of the others. So the next layer I want to do is use some of this text. Now you can continue working with your plate down on your surface, but because I want to be able to place the text, I've decided to pop my plate onto an acrylic stamping block. Now you can put this on anything that's sort of clear. If you've got perhaps the lid to a container or something you can pick up. And at least this way I can see where I'm going to be placing it. If you want to continue, working like this, you can, but just bear in mind you're going to be sort of working a little bit blind if you're trying to place a specific area in a particular place. So I want to pop some text on next, and I think I might use a coloured paint this time rather than a black paint. Process is going to be exactly the same as what I did for the images in the first layer, but I'm just going to be working with bits of text to build up a design onto our first layer images.
Tell me and be honest, tell me should I know that you'd be leaving me so painfully quiet and slow. I try my best to move on, letting go. Just like the winter snow. Tell me and be honest, tell me should I've known that you'd be leaving me so painfully quiet and slow.
layer 2, so to speak. So we've got some coloured text in there along with that black and white first image. And I'm kind of liking the random effect. By masking with a piece of torn paper as well, you sort of avoid some harsh edges. These are the two prints that I like least, but I'm just going to continue building some layers, and I'm going to like them when I've finished. They're going to be somewhat different, but there's nothing goes to waste. You can just, if it comes to it, just paint it out with paint and start over. So next, and really finally, we're going to add some sort of bright splashes of colour with the acrylic inks. And for the most part, I think I'm just going to be applying them onto my plate as is, just so I get that very sort of splashy effect. I might, on one or two of them, pop a bit of gel medium on, but we'll see. We'll see what we feel like doing as we come to each print.
Like a wild man, sleeping like a child. You're so luminous and vibrant. I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom. Always in bloom for you. Times I've stranded, a castaway on unknown shore, although a stranger in this continent.
And here are the finished prints. I've trimmed them all down, matted them onto a little bit of black card, and I've added a few bits of washi tape. This black and white washi tape. It's a Ranger brand one. I'm not entirely sure if it's Dina Wakley or one of their other designers, but I quite like, we've got this sort of scribble script and this geometric circle. And I like the fact that when you stick it down, washi tape being sort of translucent, you don't particularly see the white, the colours start to come through, and it fits very well with these printed images. So here's our first one here. Really like this. Added this little strip down the side, like the colours. It's turned out really well. Again, this one here, we've done this sort of stripe with the colour and the gel medium, as well as this splotchy red. Love the text that's come through on this one here. And then we've got these two here, both the same image. Created two different prints. Love this stripe of text down the side here. And again, these bits of washi tape, they just sort of fit in really well with the style of the prints. Now we start moving on to the prints that were less successful. Again, this image, it still shows through. It's the detail in the dress is there. I love the text on the side. Again, bit of washi tape in there just to lift the design. This one that was quite dark, we added some bolder colours on there. And again, that's washi tape sort of frames it, draws your attention to her face, which is the clearest part of that image. And then these two here, which had very little of the first image showing, but I kept going, added more colour, add some text, add sort of different layers of inks and paints, and then popped on some of this washi tape, and really like these. I could add a sentiment in there, a word, if I wanted to put something that was more of a focal point on the print. But I hope, again, it's given you a little inspiration. Another go at the magazine transfers, showing how you can layer up both pictures and text. How to add some splashes of colours with acrylic inks, which I've not used before on the plate, but I do love those bright, vibrant colours, and I'm really pleased I've used them. They work well with the black and white that we've got in the background. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the playlist below in the end card if you do need to go and find out a little bit more about magazine transfers. I have covered it previously in a little bit more depth, but I'll see you again soon. Bye.
I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom. Always in bloom for you. An infatuated life.